Imagine Europe in the summer of 1941. Nazi Germany has conquered Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and France. Hitler controls almost the entire European continent. Only one major power stands against him: Britain. Across the English Channel, Winston Churchill refuses to surrender. The Royal Air Force is battered but alive. The British Isles remain a stubborn island that Germany cannot break. Meanwhile, far to the east, the Soviet Union watches nervously. Joseph Stalin has signed a non-aggression pact with Hitler. Both sides distrust each other, but neither is ready for a direct confrontation. At least not yet. This is the moment that shapes the entire war. In our timeline, Hitler launches Operation Barbarossa. He invades the Soviet Union with more than 3 million soldiers. It becomes the largest invasion in human history. And it ultimately destroys Nazi Germany. But what if Hitler never did this? What if he chose a different path? A path that avoided the Eastern Front entirely? To understand how different the world could have become, we need to look at why Hitler attacked Russia in the first place. Hitler believed that defeating the Soviet Union quickly would secure vast farmland, oil, and resources for the German Empire. He thought the Red Army would collapse in a few months. He was wrong. The invasion turned into a nightmare that consumed his armies, drained his supplies, and exposed his troops to brutal winters they were never prepared for. So let us remove this mistake from history. Let us imagine a timeline where Hitler keeps the peace with Stalin, a timeline where Germany never opens a second front, a timeline where the full power of the German war machine focuses on one target: Britain. In this alternate world, the Luftwaffe does not split its air power between multiple regions. Every fighter and bomber is directed toward the British Isles. Every U-boat commander receives the fuel and logistics he needs. Every factory in Germany produces planes, ships, and weapons intended to crush British resistance. The Battle of Britain becomes far more intense than anything in our real history. Germany has more pilots, more aircraft, more ammunition, more fuel. Britain is under increasing pressure, facing daily raids that grow larger and more coordinated. Cities burn. Factories struggle to keep up. The population suffers from constant fear and exhaustion. Meanwhile, Winston Churchill begs the United States for more support. President Franklin Roosevelt sympathizes, but America is not in the war yet. Without the Eastern Front draining German resources, the argument for American intervention becomes even harder. While this happens, Germany begins strengthening its positions across North Africa and the Mediterranean. General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, receives reinforcements that he never had in our timeline. With more tanks, more fuel, and more air support, he pushes deep into Egypt. The British Army in North Africa becomes overwhelmed. If the Suez Canal falls, Britain loses one of its most important lifelines. Communication with India becomes difficult. Supplies face delays of months. The Middle East becomes vulnerable. And Germany now has a clear path toward the rich oil fields of Iraq and Iran. This is where the timeline truly begins to split. With access to Middle Eastern oil and a weakened Britain, Germany grows stronger. Factories in the Reich no longer suffer from fuel shortages. The Luftwaffe expands. The Kriegsmarine builds more submarines. Hitler gains confidence. He believes that Europe is already his. And through all of this, the Soviet Union remains neutral. Stalin continues to rebuild the Red Army. He watches the Germans with growing suspicion. He knows Hitler cannot be trusted forever, but he also knows that attacking Germany first would be suicide. The world holds its breath. Two dictators stare at each other across Eastern Europe, but for now, neither one moves. And without the Eastern Front, Germany becomes far more dangerous than it ever was in our actual history. This is only the beginning of the alternate timeline, because if Hitler never invades Russia, the entire Second World War changes. All alliances shift, all strategies evolve, and the balance of global power becomes unrecognizable. In the next part, we explore what happens next. Does Germany finally defeat Britain? Does America enter the war? And how long can the fragile peace between Hitler and Stalin survive? In this alternate world, the year is now 1942. Germany has achieved something it never managed in our real timeline. It avoids a two-front war. It avoids the brutal winter battles, and it avoids the crushing losses of millions of soldiers in the East. This changes everything. With no war against the Soviet Union, Germany is able to focus its entire military strength on two goals: destroy Britain and secure the Middle East. Let us start with Britain. By 1942, the German Air Force is larger and more coordinated than ever. Every aircraft that once would have been lost in Russia now targets London, Liverpool, and Manchester. British airfields suffer heavy damage. Factories struggle to recover between attacks. The Royal Air Force continues to resist, but the pressure becomes overwhelming. Britain does not fall, but it is slowly strangled. Supplies are cut. Shipping lanes are attacked. German U-boats sink thousands of tons of British cargo every week. America sends support, but it is not enough to change the balance quickly. In our timeline, Germany had to divide its navy, its air force, and its army across several fronts. Here, everything is aimed at one island, and each month that island grows weaker. Meanwhile, in North Africa, Rommel advances with new speed. Germany sends fresh tanks, better supply lines, and more air units to support him. British forces cannot hold their positions. They fall back from Libya, then from Egypt, then from the Suez. When the Suez Canal finally collapses, the shock hits London like an earthquake. Britain has lost its gateway to India. Its greatest empire link is broken, and with it, one of its last hopes of sustaining the war. Now let us move to the Middle East. The fall of Egypt gives Germany a direct path to the oil fields of Iraq and Iran. In our timeline, Hitler desperately needed fuel. Lack of oil crippled his tanks, planes, and ships. It was one of the main reasons Germany eventually crumbled. But in this alternate world, Germany takes the oil fields. The Reich gains access to millions of barrels of oil every month. Factories begin working at a scale never seen before. The German war machine grows larger than any nation expected. By 1943, the balance of power in Europe begins to shift completely. Britain is isolated. Germany is rich in oil and resources. America grows more worried by the day but cannot directly strike Hitler without bases in Europe. The Soviet Union watches silently, strengthening its army but avoiding conflict as long as possible. Stalin does not trust Hitler, but he also knows that Germany is at its strongest point in history. Attacking now would be suicide. So the Soviet Union remains neutral. Two giants stare at each other, neither willing to fire the first shot. This creates a strange and tense balance. Europe is divided between two dictators who hate each other but remain locked in a cold peace. Hitler believes he has time. Stalin believes Germany will eventually weaken. Both of them are wrong. As the war continues, Germany shifts its focus to technology. Scientists begin developing jet aircraft earlier. The V-2 rocket program expands. Submarines become more advanced. Germany experiments with guided missiles and radar systems that arrive years ahead of schedule. Without the drain of the Eastern Front, Germany becomes a technological superpower. The world changes in ways no one could have predicted. America realizes that if Europe falls entirely under Nazi control, there may be no stopping the Reich from dominating the globe. But joining the war is more complicated than before. Without the Soviet Union fighting Germany, American public opinion is divided. Many Americans argue that the war in Europe is not their business. President Roosevelt continues to send supplies to Britain, but he knows that Britain cannot survive forever. The question is no longer whether Hitler will fight the Soviet Union. The question is when, and on whose terms. This is the tension that defines Europe in 1943. A powerful, resource-rich Germany, an isolated Britain, a hesitant United States, and a silent, waiting Soviet Union. In the next part, we will explore the critical turning point. Does Germany finally defeat Britain? Does Europe fall under one empire? And how does the inevitable clash between Hitler and Stalin reshape the world? The year is now 1944 in this alternate timeline. Britain is exhausted. Germany controls most of Europe. North Africa and the Middle East have fallen. The Reich has more oil, more weapons, and more soldiers than ever before. Yet the world is not finished. History still has one final twist. British defenses are stretched thin, cities are damaged, food is running low, morale is weak. But Britain refuses to surrender. Churchill believes Germany will eventually make a mistake. However, in this alternate world, that mistake does not come. Germany has no Eastern Front draining its strength, no winter destroying its divisions, no massive losses in Russia. Hitler is fully focused on one goal: crush British resistance. Germany begins planning a new version of the invasion of Britain called Operation Sea Lion. In our timeline, it failed before it started. Germany lacked fuel, aircraft, and naval power, but here the situation is different. Germany has more landing craft, more air power, more submarines, and unlimited oil from the Middle East. The invasion is not guaranteed to succeed, but it becomes far more realistic than in our real history. Across the ocean, the United States watches with fear. President Roosevelt knows that if Britain falls, Germany will dominate Europe for decades. But without a German attack on Russia, the American public is split. Many argue that Europe should handle its own problems. Then, a sudden event changes everything. Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. The United States enters the war, but now must fight in two regions. America cannot focus all of its strength on Europe. Germany gains precious time. Hitler uses that time to prepare for a war that everyone expects: the conflict between Germany and the Soviet Union. In our timeline, Hitler attacked first. His invasion failed and destroyed the German army. But in this alternate world, Stalin is the one who grows impatient. By 1944, the Soviet Union has rebuilt its military. Stalin sees Germany growing stronger every month. He fears that waiting will bring disaster, so he takes the risk. The Soviet Union launches a surprise attack across Eastern Europe. The world is shocked. Hitler reacts with rage. Two dictatorships that distrust each other are now locked in a massive war. But this war is not like the one in our timeline. Germany is prepared. It has more tanks, more aircraft, more fuel, and officers with years of battlefield experience. The Soviet assault slows within weeks. Germany counterattacks. Cities like Kiev, Minsk, and Riga fall quickly. Britain is barely holding on. The United States is fighting Japan across the Pacific. And now, the Eastern Front collapses in a way it never did in real history. By 1945, German troops pushed deep into Soviet territory. Stalin orders retreats, but the situation becomes chaos. Cities burn. Railways are destroyed. Millions flee westward. The Soviet Union begins to crumble. If Germany wins this war, nothing will stop it from reshaping the world. Europe becomes a single empire under German control. Schools, laws, and culture are rewritten to serve the Reich. Occupied nations lose their freedom. Borders are removed. Resistance movements survive only in secret. In the Middle East, Germany controls oil and governs through military rule. Africa becomes a continent of German colonies. Resources are taken on a massive scale. Asia remains divided between Japan and the Allies. Japan grows stronger but still faces American pressure in the Pacific. The United States becomes the last great power able to challenge Germany. But fighting both Germany and Japan is almost impossible. A global Cold War forms between America and a victorious Nazi empire. Humanity enters a darker age. Civil rights vanish across Europe. Dictatorship becomes the global norm. Technology advances, but under strict control. The world moves toward a future shaped by fear and surveillance. This is the world that might have existed if Hitler never invaded Russia. A world where Germany avoided its greatest mistake. A world where the Allies faced a stronger and more prepared enemy. A world where history turned in a very different direction. Alternate history reminds us how fragile real events are, how one choice can change everything, and how close the world came to a future far worse than the one we know today.